starting 6 months before the election, the performance of IEBC, the performance of the key political stakeholders, how IEBC conducted that election. We interrogate the various systems that were in place, and then we come and say, very well, this particular aspect was incurably wrong, and the error is attributable to this individual or that individual. Then we ask this fellow, if it is something that borders on criminality, to go to court.
Okay.
If it is something for which you should take responsibility and resign, then we say, Oswago, resign.
Isn't it a fact that your procurement systems were questionable? Like, for instance, there were those police things that to check metal detectors, which, I don't know, you asked for and nobody saw them, and which you are blaming whoever you blame. I saw in the newspapers today. Your procurement systems from the very 6 months we are talking about were questionable. Enough for fact, there were differences between you, Mr. Oswago, and the commissioner and the chairman.
No. I'll explain. And earlier on during the break, David asked if we could swear on the Bible. I can tell this on the Bible anytime, and I'm practicing and a very good Christian. Number one, the need for the metal detectors was a requirement brought us by the police themselves. I have got evidence, I've got letters written by the police at the highest levels, not one, not two, not three, asking the commission to ensure that in every polling station you have a metal detector. And they were saying in every polling station. And there were 34,000 polling stations. Yeah. We had to get them. And we didn't even have the budget for it. We had to jointly go to Treasury and explain that, well, if this is required, you have to give us additional funding. And we told them this funding must not be part of our vote because we don't need these things ourselves. But they were included as a part of the security requirement.
And they were bought.
That's number one. Number two, there was another aspect that was also provided in the collaboration between IEBC and the police. One is to train the police. Secondly, developing handbooks and letting the police know their role, even in how to write charge sheets. And the donors raised $1.8 million, which was spent in that particular aspect. Donors could not buy the metal detectors because, number one, this is a security issue. Number two, I think they did because of shortage of finance. So this was left to be bought. But when somebody says, Makali, that we bought them, the commission did not need to have metal detectors. But the security consideration
that is okay.
That particular time.
Understood.
No, they were not bought.
Okay.
And again, instead of us procuring them, to ensure that we distance ourselves from the procurement process, we asked a certified government department to do it. If we had self-interest, we would have done it ourselves.
So why did you procure 105,000 as opposed to 34,000 polling stations? Or even if you were to multiply that to female and male searches, 68,000. Another, whooping 50,000+ detectors. What was the rationale?
And were they used anyway? I didn't see
Of course, they never came. But what was the rationale for that high number of detectors?
First, David, I first heard about that figure 100 something in the press. I first heard about it. What the figure that I know and the figure that we're working with is 34,000. I first heard
Okay, since you heard about it, what have you established? That in fact there are 105 or 34,000?
I don't even need to establish.
No, it should concern you for sure because you are the ultimate users.
You know where
if they have over procured, you should say no, we don't need those. And you are the chief chief executive officer.
You know why I'm saying so, David?
Yes.
The letters that I've written and signed for talk about 34,000. The letters that I have written to the Treasury, the letters that I wrote to the public, to PSC, are 34,000.
Okay, so what happened?
So when it says, when somebody says there is a requisition for 100 something thousand, in my view, I just thought that was journalistic access. I just thought that was just some malice.
Okay. No, Mr. Oswago, let's get specific here. Are you saying that you have not established, since you heard about the figure of 105,000, that you have not established whether in fact it's true or not? And secondly, there was a cost factor there from 8,500 to 15,000, which is an escalation that happens with all procurements. So what have you established? Because that is 3 days ago, 4 days ago. Obviously, you cannot let that pass in your position.
I have established that the bill is supposed to be 1.6 billion. I've established that the figure that if you add, that is 34,000 kits at 15,000 shillings. It is not the commission that set the price of a unit of those kits. Ministry of Works advertised. Right. Ministry of Works got the procurement done. They established the price of a single unit. And they told us that one unit would be 15,000 shillings. If you add 34,000 to that, it comes 1.something billion. That is the figure that I know. I am not aware as of now, because if you add 15,000 to 100,000 that is being said, you are talking almost 7 billion. That should be the budget. That should be the request.
So it's false?
It's false, absolutely. It's not just false, it's crazy. Okay. It's madness.
Okay. Let's just,
those are the kinds of things that reasonable people should never do. I think there is a level of prudence. There is a minimal diligence that is required in some of these reporting.
Let's look at,
that.
Okay,
false.
Mr. Oswago, you said that initially, that as far as you can tell, there was no corporate scheme to give the election or electoral victory to any of the parties' contestants. And that if anything transpired, it was entirely, something that happened because of the failure, systemic failure, and so forth. Do you, as, of course, Electoral Commission, so what level of responsibility do you want to take over those systemic failures? Because some people said, and I've had a lot of communication on ICT, that this kit had been tested even before the elections. They flopped, but they still went ahead and procured those ones. There was no certification of the procured items. Isn't that responsibility somebody needs to take and be fired or resign for it?
Which kit? Which specific kit?
The what are they called? Identification. Voter identification kit.
You're calling it.
It was not tested before. It was not. It didn't fail. Conceptually, when it was tested, it worked. It has worked recently in Makueni. It worked in Kuria. It worked in Samburu post the election. It is not fault-proof, just like any other. Like any machine, a Mercedes-Benz or a spacecraft, you'll have faults here and there, which needs to be improved, So it works, and it has worked up to now. We supplied the right quantities.
Except it did not work on 4th of March.
Why it didn't work
yes.
on 4th of March has to do with the power system. The power system is to do with the battery. You'll be surprised.
So it works at a smaller scale. At a larger scale, it flops.
No.
Yet we are doing it at a smaller scale so that it can work at a bigger scale when the ultimate test is.
No. It worked. The only reason, when I say the battery component is the bit that makes it not work, I'm not saying that's a smaller, that's not a smaller scale, no. This is a gadget.
Yes.
You can power it using mains, or you can power it using batteries.
Right.
And actually, we had 2 batteries as backups. The problem was, and we can demonstrate this one, and there needs to be goodwill in some of these things. The problem was with the power charging system. This is an external thing, how you charge the batteries and the rate at which the batteries discharge.
Yes.
When you start using them. You find that you start using it, it discharges at a very fast rate. Okay. Now, we had a cure for that. Because in every place, if it was discharging so rapidly, you either had to connect again to the mains, or in other places we had generators, and we also had the solar powers. Because the stuff we were using then were new, and we had not socialized themselves to interact with these things fully, they charged the batteries. But once the batteries started running out, they didn't know what to do next. Makali, the results or the consequences of that error are magnified in large geometric proportions.
Yes.
But the error itself was very minimal.
Okay, let me read you some of our viewers' texts because they illustrate the mixed views towards the IEBC's conduct. Sylvia, IEBC did a good job. Why dwell on the BVR kits? Elections are gone. Oswago and co did a good job. They should not resign. If court won, would we be interrogating the IEBC because we know... well, that's nonsensical. And then Mutuma, we will never forget what the IEBC made us go through, especially the utterances made by the chairman that Raila had never conceded any elections. It showed how biased they were. And the remedy is to disband the commission. That came from Mutuma. So they both reflect the views of some of our viewers. Those who are happy with the results of the election feel that the IEBC did a good job. Those who are not happy with the results of the election feel that the IEBC was complicit in the outcome. The question then becomes, if you're not resigning, because you say that no one has brought you any specific incidents of failure on your part, and we know that before the election, the IEBC was, its trust rating was quite high. What are you doing to regain the trust of Kenyans across the board, regardless of their political divide?
Thank you. First of all, the two views that you've read, one would encourage me not to resign, the other one would encourage me to resign. Yeah. The two views that you've read. Secondly, like I said, the chairman could have said what is being quoted there. But I said earlier on
he did, not that he could have said, he did say that.
I think I will still go back to the question of putting IEBC as an automatic defendant in some of these things. So you develop the attitude of being a defendant.
Yes.
Instead of having, you are a public body. Create a law that says, IEBC, you are a public body. In the event of a dispute and an election, you are entitled to provide all the materials required. 1. 2, if you fail, these are the consequences. So that if there is a presidential election, the first thing that IEBC would do would to avail every information that is required by all the parties within 24 hours or so.
So you're accepting then that there was tardiness on your part during the Supreme Court verdict?
No, I'm simply saying the law as it is today makes IEBC a defendant, an automatic defendant. You know.
Yeah.
And so it's not in your interest to provide evidence.
Yes.
That has been requested.
It is your national duty to provide the right. evidence. But at the same time,
you cannot provide evidence that could incriminate you.
That could be one, you know. But it is our job to provide that, to create a law.
Yes.
And I think IEBC would discharge itself. Now, how do we redeem ourselves? Number one, I have said we did 1,882 elections. So far, we've only had about 180 petitions. And of those petitions, only one has successful. You know, the one you read there yesterday. And going by the number of petitions that have been dismissed so far, it looks to us like maybe you not have more than 10, 15 or a handful successful. Surely this is a measure that the Commission did an outstanding work.
But you're cited in one of those petitions.
As?
Mabel Muruli, I think, in Kakamega, in her petition against the election of the governor, says that you refused to help. She had an issue and came to you, and you chose not to engage yourself with it, and points to that as a failure of the IEBC and a wider, conspiracy to keep her from contesting the seat.
And she will not be the first one to cite me or cite the chairman of the commissioners. Because anyone who was running for an election and who made some obstacle somewhere came to us. And they said, this is my case. Many of them felt that by coming to the CEO or by going to the chairman, you have this power to issue a writ and say, do it this way. But every time there is an election and you come to the office of the CEO with a grievance, what the first thing we do, where is the law? And we'll advise you, say, well, if this is what you want to do, this is the procedure that you have to follow. Muruli's problem was to do the degree or academic qualifications. And we advised that if, I don't want to go into the merits of the discussion that I had with her because this must be held in confidence. If she chooses to make it public, that is her own discretion. But when you come to the commission and it is an issue of academic certification, we advise you that this is the way to proceed in order to get this academic qualification certified. And this is the kind of certification that we get. And when we get that, when you bring that to us on time, then we say, very well, go and contest. Number one. Number two, it is the returning officer in the region that actually does that. We can only advise the returning officer, listen, this is what we have heard, we have checked up to this point, and this is what happens. Okay,
we have to pause now. This is Cheche, the program where opinion counts, live on Citizen TV with James Oswago, CEO of the IEBC. We will see you after the break.
Shamba Shape Up Safari.
Welcome back to Cheche here on Citizen TV. Our guest, James Oswago, Chief Executive Officer of the IEBC, has been mounting a vigorous defense of the commission he runs. And so it seems like a charm offensive, but we've been reading in the newspapers lately that some of the materials you ordered for the March election are only arriving now. And so when you try to persuade us that, you know, some of the failures were not planned, how do you expect a public that is skeptical of your motives to trust your competence or trust that you can hold competent elections in the future?
Right. I also read it in the papers that materials to do the lantern arrived late.
Yes, and that you had refused to pay for them.
Listen, we asked for these materials. They were supposed to be brought and used on the 4th of March election. They were brought a month or so late. We told the supplier, we are not accepting them, and we have not accepted them. Then I read in the papers that this has been accepted and 100 and something million already paid. I'm telling you, looking at you in the eye. One, they were brought, yes, we ordered for them. One, they were brought late. Two, we have not paid for them. And I'm looking at you in the eye.
Okay.
We have not paid for it. We have not.
Anyway,
so, but I read in the papers, people saying IEBC has
so paid. So your position has been misrepresented?
Absolutely not it is distorted.
Distorted.
I'm beginning to, I'm coming to believe, Woodwork, I'm coming to believe that this is not mere hiccups that we have with the journalism. I'm seeing more to it. That maybe this
there's a media conspiracy to distort your
I would say image. Media conspiracy. Maybe media is
or outright incompetence.
Maybe too much laziness. For instance, a fellow says, I wrote that I couldn't get James Oswago. All right, fine, you couldn't get me. I was in a funeral with my auntie's funeral. Maybe you didn't get me. But surely, you are writing a major story like that and you call me on a Friday only? You could have called me earlier, I would answer. You know, number one. Number two, there are fellows who deliver supplies in the commission. Thirdly, is it so difficult to verify? Why wouldn't you call the supplier himself and ask? Because the supplier himself is almost taking us to court. If they had called the fellow, he would have said they have not accepted these items and is aggrieved. But here you find it in the paper say the commission has accepted. In short, we have not accepted because they were delivered late.
Okay, excellent.
You might want to blame the press, but even politicians look at it. Former vice president says. Former vice president says in those political rallies that TNA is IBC, IBC is TNA. That damage is major. That's why we're asking you, what do you intend to do about salvaging your image? During the elections on the 4th of March, there were claims, which nobody has verified, that the transmission system
use the same server.
Use the same server with TNA, that you are infiltrated by agents of intelligence, and that's why the whole mess came because of that. Now tell us, how do you sort out that mess?
Good.
That it's continuing from 4th of March up to today.
Good.
TNA is IEBC, IEBC is TNA.
Good. First, that is a very good soundbite. TNA this, IEBC that. But of course you know that's not correct. But the VP, former VP is entitled to his own views, and the choice of phraseology, that's fine. But
Public perception matters.
Yeah, but you mentioned an important issue. It is true that our servers failed. Let me ask you.
Infiltrated by...
let me ask you.
What you are calling failure is infiltration.
If our servers were infiltrated by the special branch, as you are saying, because not only was there a failure of servers at the National Tallying Center, there was a failure of servers countrywide. If our servers were infiltrated by the special branch, as you are saying, do you blame the IEBC for that?
Surely you should have protected your systems.
Yeah. Who should we blame, Mr. Oswago? You are charged with conducting an election.
Yes.
The systems, everything is under your management.
Yes.
It is a failure if you can't protect your systems from infiltration or external interference.
You are an independent institution.
Makali, let us not...
You are not part of special branch.
Let us not miss the larger picture. If you are saying our system was infiltrated by an agency paid for by taxpayers, established by the Constitution, whose very mandate is to ensure the sovereignty of this republic, whose very mandate is to ensure the safety and public well-being of Kenyans, if you are saying that that entity itself undertook an activity that subverts